Happy New Year. Seems strange, 2020.
Yeah.
Gonna take a while to get used to that, right? I have out, if you needed one, let me know, but I put out a sheet for you, Economic Development 5-Year Strategic Plan. And I wanted to kind of cover that. A lot of times the community wonders what the city or the government entities are doing to address economic development. And I've mentioned here before, the city, the county, the village, we all pay into the Cibola Economic Development Foundation, and many of us sit on that board. We meet monthly and we do talk about economic initiatives, and Eileen Yarbrough is paid through that foundation, and that's her job, is economic development. So she works very closely with government, she works closely with Main Street, the chamber, to do things to that effect. We've talked about for years about having a strategic plan, and so we finally had a little mini retreat in December where we came together and we talked about things. And so this is a little short summary for you so that you have an idea of what we're working on. And we talked about what does economic development mean in our communities. We see economic development as expanding job opportunities, increasing the community wealth and tax base to provide for growth and development, to include new and expanding businesses and infrastructure. And we identified what we thought were some critical issues that as a community and as a county we thought we need to address. One is training and making workforce employable. So I know at the city we've had a lot of issues trying to hire even basic positions such as custodians, finding applicants that, getting enough applications, and getting people who can pass a background check, a drug and alcohol testing, all those kind of things, and then just the skill level. And so if we want to attract new industry here that are going to come in and they need to hire 100 employees, we don't think we have the people here that want to work and that are willing to work. And it's, Timo's shaking his head yes, but sometimes it's more want to work. And I hear people say all the time there's no jobs here. There are jobs here. The city's had jobs and we can't fill them a lot of times. Right now we've been hiring people for our pipe laying crew, and we haven't been able to fill those positions. So that's the thing that we've got to really fix, because people come in and look at our community, and if they want to start up some manufacturing or something, they want to know that they're going to be able to obtain employees.
May I just stop right there?
Sure.
The Gallup Economic Development has hired someone to do just that, to do training for people that want to work. And they've identified employers that will help train these people and hire them once they have been trained. They had 12 applicants, 12 students, 12 that completed, 12 that got jobs out of that 12-week session that they had. And it included things like basic construction. They completed a house that was going to be through the Southwest Indian Foundation that was going to be donated to a family on the Navajo Reservation. They worked with the oil company, the refining companies. They worked with not Continental Divide, but the Fox plant here. There were several companies, and also Wilson Welding. So these people that went into this program got a broad spectrum of what jobs were available and how to develop those skills.
So who was facilitating that?
Johnny Gonzalez.
And which programs he worked for?
The Greater Gallup Industrial Program, but it's through the Greater Gallup
Industrial
Economic Development.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, we have something fairly similar through our workforce development program through the state, but I don't know that it's that extensive, but they do send people out, and then they have funds to pay for their wages while they learn new techniques to become employable.
The problem with that, if it goes through the employer has to hire them to do that. Well, with this other program, it was a free program. And they had 12 weeks of intensive training. So it was totally different than this state program.
Yeah.
And you have to find employers that want to do that, because it's not always an incentive to the employer.
Right.
To do that.
Yeah.
We've attempted to do that over the years, and we've simply found that once they get a first paycheck, they're gone.
Yeah.
What we do is intensive, and finding people that want to really pursue this is difficult.
And you're talking about with 7 cities that when you brought people on through the workforce? Yeah. Number 2, business retention and expansion. So keeping, the current business pool and then expanding either their business or more businesses we felt is critical. Improve Main Street downtown aesthetics. We feel like that will help attract industry and people coming to our community. Increase support for New Mexico for the Cibola County projects. So when we're wanting to do something such as open a refinery, we've got to have state level support from the governor's office on down to be able to do those kind of things. Lack of target marketing and business attraction. So, what is it we really need to attract that will work well in our communities, that we have the resources to help that business. And then number 6, decreased financial support and collaboration from the government entities. And that's pertaining to the Economic Development Foundation. Over the years, they've seen a decrease in city, county, village support funding-wise and resource-wise. And then 7, we thought a critical issue is our education system, both within our public schools and our higher ed through the college. It can be key. And then another critical, number 8, lack of retail and social life. And I'm not sure why those two are mixed together, but the social life, of course, if we're trying to attract doctors or people who are not married and need some kind of outside their home social life, which even married people do, but having some avenues of things for them to do. And I think we have a lot of that. I don't know that we have a coordinated effort to let people know what's available. There's lots to do. So we developed 4 goals, and we also developed strategies. I didn't include those on here, and the reason I didn't include the strategies is the strategies were developed by the consultant and maybe Eileen, who were working with us, but our teams didn't develop the strategies, and frankly I feel like they're not very strong strategies. So personally, as a city manager, I will work with my staff, and maybe hopefully we'll work among the Economic Development Foundation to really beef up those strategies. The strategies they came up for us, I felt like were things we're already doing, or they're just kind of fluff that they wouldn't make much of a difference, or we wouldn't be able to see them through. So I think that's going to be key, is what do we determine are the strategies to address these key areas. So the goals we had were workforce development, 2, business attraction, retention, and small business development, entrepreneurship, and then infrastructure and downtown development. So, all of the things, internet, all of those kind of things that a business might need in order to function. And then organizational development. So the organizational development was specific around the Cibola Economic Foundation and just kind of strengthening the partnerships, the resources, the focus of that group. And so any questions on that? Or
did they address the closing of the power plant and the dependence on the box plant on the steam from the power plant.
Yes, we talked about that, and we are anticipating that might be coming. First off, the paper mill, my husband works there, so I kind of have an insight voice from there, but the paper mill is talking about if the power plant closes, they're not closing, they'll be able to develop their own mechanisms for the steam. So they're not considering closing, at least that's what they're saying to their employees. We're part of a regional group that's looking at the closing of coal mines, the power plant. We're working with Farmington, who's already experiencing some of that as well. And there's some strategies that they've developed, and the Council of Governments. Brandon's here today with us. He works with the Council of Governments, works with on a regional level with our community, the village, the county. They also work with Farmington, Bloomfield, Aztec, so the northern region area. And they've come up with some strategies of what we're going to do. There's been conversations with the governor, and she knows that we're going to need some kind of resources. The governor talked about she would channel some money this way, but for training people to do new jobs. But somebody brought to my attention that that's what they did years ago when the mines closed, and they trained people to do other things. Well, her husband got trained to do IT work, internet and computer setups and all that stuff. But even though they had a new skill, there were no jobs for that here. So I would hope that, to me, the resources need to go towards some kind of industry being here. Otherwise, we train people, and if there's not jobs, then they're going to be moving away. So then that hurts all the others, like the restaurants and others that rely on people living here.
You remember Andy Morrow?
Yes.
And he had a project where the university went to the employers, the business owners, and determined what does a business need to stay viable. Okay, what do they really need? And there was a project that he was very instrumental in getting, because he would find businesses that became mentors, businesses that became employers, provided that they would hire these people with the skills that they needed. But it also directed the high school and the college to say, this is what we need in our community to keep these businesses here. Mm-hmm. And we don't see that happening.
Yeah, so what kind of things are you thinking that they could do to keep the businesses here?
Well, for example, our young people don't see the viable need for working here except maybe at McDonald's or a restaurant or a gas station or something like that. They don't see the potential that we really have here. And so there isn't that at the high school level, so that they begin to have a vision for what they can begin to do. And at the college level, I don't know what they're doing. I've stayed out of that for a number of years. So I don't know what they're doing to channel these people, except for the nursing program. Now that's been very successful.
Yes. Yeah. You know, I think a lot of young people, when they grow up in a small town, they dream of moving away and living in San Diego or, Denver or a big city. And I'll tell you, having lived here long enough and having children and knowing a lot of the youth, a lot of our youth have left and gone to school, and maybe they've worked somewhere else, but there's a lot that have come back. And I know, Mark came back. My children are both going to end up here. My daughter's here. She's a human resource at the hospital. My son's going to end up being a physician assistant that comes back here. The Tencio young people have come back. The Lovesey young people, I don't know, I'm thinking of lots of young people. The Gaines kids are here. There's lots that have come back and gone off to get their degrees, but I see a lot come back. And I think initially a lot of young people are like, well, I'm going to leave Grants and then I don't ever want to come back. But I think once they leave and see the grass isn't greener on the other side, that they're like, grants wasn't that bad. So we do have a lot coming back, but we don't have some available higher paying jobs for some of them that have higher degrees. But
I have a question.
Mhm.
As far as you're talking about, reshaping the face of grants, either with a new industry, there was an economic development team that was federally sponsored. Have we got any word back from them?
so, are you talking
We
about?
won an award.
Yes, they're going to be coming in March or April. They're going to be working with 10 communities, and that was the recreation. It's basically outdoor recreation. They're going to help us look at how we can tap into that industry. But they're visiting 10 communities, so they're doing some scheduling. But I was given tentatively the first part of March or the first part of April, maybe both. They'll be out once or twice as a team to come and meet with key stakeholders. So we'll make sure to invite the Main Street and Chamber and a lot of the key organizations. And I believe they're going to have some community forums, at least one. So that will be coming this spring.
Very good. I just feel like we have such a beautiful area and the mountains, right? Very accessible from the interstate. That we can really be a bridge for recreation, kind of like a Durango or a Pagosa.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, I feel like somehow we've got to attract some entrepreneurs that are willing to open businesses. So that's kind of where we're lacking. We saw the Dairy Queen close. Nobody bought that up. A very viable business, was doing well. The couple that owned it wanted to retire. I know Ray Rennan's got his restaurant for sale. He'd like to slow down and not have a restaurant. He hasn't. The Bacas too are getting to that age, and Patty's Hallmark closed, very viable business, and nobody bought it up. So and I don't know how to do that, but that's somehow what we've been doing at the city. Is our marketing coordinator has been sending out invites. So she sent out, I know, invites to the optometrist school to say, hey, get the word out. Grants is going to need an optometrist because ours is retiring. Things that we felt like that there's business here, that people could open a business. Outdoor recreation equipment is a viable business. So that people could rent skis or get a tire for their mountain bike. Those kind of things. But we have a lot, taking ATV rides, ATV tours. That's a viable business that could do well here because we have so much within 15 miles of the city that somebody could start up a tour business. So I think we have lots of opportunities. So I'm looking forward to that because these individuals have worked with several small communities and helped them come up with some ideas on how to spur that development, and I think that's something we could work on.
So where do we stand with the Zuni Mountain project?
The county got, I think, 800,000, something like that. I don't remember. Brandon may read, it's about 800,000. So their project should be starting this spring. I'm anticipating that they will be working on a trailhead and trail in the Zuni Mountains. So that was about a 10-year coming project. Gallup's been working on trails for probably 20 years, and they pulled us in and invited us to be a part of the Zuni Mountain Trail Initiative. And so we're going to see the fruits of that coming here soon. Yeah. So that's in the works, yes.
You just talked about some specific job opportunities. How do we publicize them?
Well, we're sending invitations out to other businesses. So I know like Chris has sent out notices to sports stores and saying, hey, would you be interested in starting a satellite business in Grants? She did the same for the coffee shop, saying we have this empty coffee shop. We're looking for some company to come in and start that up. And we had about, I would say about 6 different companies come and considered expanding their current business, which was somewhere else, to grants. So we just got to keep putting the word out there, because I don't think people are going to think, oh, let's go to grants. We've got to kind of put that seed out there. We did the same when they were doing the art project, and there was all the publicity about unhappy businesses on Central. We sent out a team of 2 people with an invite, please consider looking at locating in grants, whether you want to move your business permanently or you want to do a satellite or expand. So we've done that, but I think we just got to keep inviting people to think of us. And then Eileen goes to these tours basically where businesses come in and they look at, saying we're looking at starting up a solar plant, where it might be good, and then they get to visit with the different economic people from different communities to see what your community has to offer. So she goes to probably 4 or 5 of those a year. Then they're usually like in Denver or Las Vegas, something where they bring people in that are looking at starting or expanding their business.
And are we using the internet?
We are, yes. So I know on our website we have business possibilities, and we've listed the things that we think there's a need for here and a market for here. And Eileen, I believe, has the same on hers. Yeah. So I just wanted you to know, we are thinking in those terms, and we, the city's not, as I've learned more, we're not responsible on if people start up businesses, but there are things that we can do to help facilitate that. And Eileen's office is very familiar with tax breaks. So there are some tax breaks at the state level more so that she can channel people to get. Yeah, we had heard they were gonna open, and this has been probably 8 months ago, and there was some activity over there, and then all of a sudden it stopped. I had heard, I believe through the code enforcement was keeping contact with them, that they had a mold problem, so they were dealing with that. But Chris noticed in all of her work, she's our marketing director, that they have the building for sale. So we're not sure what's happening. Yeah. The greenhouse, they're trying to strike a deal between us or Milan. The things they asked the city for were things that we can't offer. They wanted us to give them sole rights to certain stuff, and we can't do that. They're wanting to grow hemp and medical herbs and stuff, and we can't license that kind of stuff. It's licensed at the state level. So any permitting you need has to be at the state level. So the things they asked, they wanted us to guarantee them so much water for so many years, and we're not at that point where they've got their ducks in a row. So I think they approached Milan to possibly move something out to their farm, and Eileen with Economic Development gave them a LEDA application. So a LEDA application, there's a state LEDA Act that allows government to assist in some way with business development, and it has to be in lieu of creating jobs. So you have to, put in a plan and show that you're going to create so many jobs, and we're going to, we did a LEDA with Walgreens, and our contribution was the road into Walgreens, which cost the city about $80,000, and it was on private property, but we were able to do that because they were going to create jobs. So, but the greenhouse people have not given that LEDA application filled out and back to Milan. So we're not sure.
That would be a great thing to go, because we use hemp for everything. And it's not for smoking or anything like that, it's
For medical.
for shampoos, it's for soaps, everything.
Uh-huh.
That would be great to have, but it's not budget,
Yeah. We're real cautious with the greenhouse group because, they left a lot of unpaid people and unpaid businesses here when they left the first time. So it's the same people. Yeah, the same main owners. He's got some new partners, but yeah, we're just real cautious.
Okay, I didn't know it was the same people. I thought it was something new.
No, it's not somebody new. And what's interesting, they filed bankruptcy, and the bankruptcy says the main guy, which is John Stockwell, is not supposed to be involved at all. Well, that's the only person we ever saw initially. Now, he's been sending some other guy now, but yeah, we're just kind of real leery. And they haven't asked us to do anything that we legally can do, so,
Should be very.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand that the village of Milan decided that they would not pursue that with them because of the county, the reputation that they have, and they can't
Yeah.
absorb the debt that
Yeah.
might be created by that company.
Well, it seems kind of silly. They have spent some effort cleaning this one up for them to move things out to Milan when they have so much resources right here. But they signed an agreement with Acoma about maybe 2.5, 3 years ago. That kind of fell by the wayside now. They were saying Acoma wasn't moving fast enough for them, but I don't know what the issue is, but.
What kind of input do we have into the school curricula here? Because I understand from the school teacher that she said her children expect to be in welfare because their parents have the intergenerational. So at what point could we do something at the school level, elementary school?
Yeah, I think we could work in partnership and really communicate. This is what we see as a need, what skills are kids coming out of school without that as businesses might need. So, that's part of the plan, is to work closely with the high school, the college, mid-school age. The schools have started several programs over the last probably 10 years that are gearing kids up. I think one of the programs is called Gear Up, gearing them to go to college. They had a program at one time where kids were learning how to save to go to college, putting a little bit of money here or there so that they would have money for college. But there's several initiatives, but we got to keep that communication going. And they are a part, both the college and the schools are a part of the Economic Development Foundation, and have representatives on there. And in fact, one year we funded $25,000 for a teacher at the mid-school for a special science program. I did not vote on behalf of that just because I think we have a great science program, and that's one thing I'd like to say. My kids went through the school system, and I'll tell you, then they went on to NMSU, UNM, both of them went to both schools, but at both of those schools, at college level, they did very well. So I feel like we do have good schools here. And for families who get their kids to school and the parents, care, we have a good education system.
I was going to say, for the ones that don't have parents that are heavily involved in creating life skills, those are the ones that are really disadvantaged.
And I
Because
think those could probably be zeroed in on by counselors and stuff like that.
that's there's the ratio counselor to student is just too high.
And I know
Yeah.
teachers can be able to point out.
But I gotta be honest, not once did anyone talk about what bank fees look like, what credit card interest looks like, how to balance a checkbook, any of those things. And if I wouldn't have learned that at home from my parents, it never once got talked about. And so I think, especially at the high school level, like a life skills coaching program, even in after school tutoring, I think would be really beneficial.
Yeah.
When I went to high school.
Not when I
My daughter did too, 20.
Yeah, I think we could beef up those life skill programs. And that was the thing I was going to say. This science teacher at the mid-school, I didn't think was necessary. I think we already have good science. What we're lacking are vocation. So I believe there's a lot of youth that aren't college bound here. And so what do we channel them into? We need plumbers, we need welders, we need electricians. Programs that are 2-year or less that we could provide here, even automotive and body work. Those are things,
HVAC.
that we could use here, that we could channel kids into.
We need somehow to get those kids to know that working is life.
Yeah, to motivate them.
Not to follow mom,
Yeah.
You get free money, but that leads to stuff too.
And along those same lines of thought is the substance abuse issues that are generational. You know, that is so tough. You pull kids out of their home environment is a lot of the issue, you know, what they're exposed to, what the expectations or the modeling they see at home is a big issue as far as, getting to work. That's the thing I think most employers will tell you is just getting reliable people that show up on time, show up regularly, don't call in for everything. I had a young man, it's been a couple of months ago, we were having a lot of absenteeism. He had every excuse, and he comes in kind of crying on my shoulder. Oh, I'm helping my sister, and she's having problems, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, you know, you're talking to the wrong person. I told him, you know what? I said, I was divorced and raised 2 kids by myself. And I said, you've missed more work than I've missed in my entire career already. And you've only been with us a few months. So I'm just like, you're crying to the wrong person. I said, if you want to get to work, you can get to work and you can still help your family. And I said, I've done it, anybody can do it. And so, but I don't know if that's what he's been used to, you know, grown up and seen that you come up with all kinds of excuses.
Having been the director for literacy volunteers for a number of years, what I discovered was that many of the youngsters that were expelled from school, that were not permitted to go back to school, but the judge had said they had to be in an educational program, they were not being parented. And so I believe that when a child reaches about age 3, they can begin to learn to make their bed or wash dishes or sweep the floor. These are things that parents need to be able to teach their children. And then as they get older, there are things that they need to learn to do, like we learn to sew and we learn to cook and we learn, boys learned how to repair cars and do basic things around the house. These things are not being taught by parents. So these youngsters that are coming, that are struggling, are not being parented. I had a father come to me one day and he said, we've given up on this child. If you can do anything with him, that's fine. Now, this was a youngster that was in the 10th grade, reading at a 4th or 5th grade level. He went on to get his GED because of some of the things that we instilled in him. But I see that's a real problem. We've got 2 and 3 generations of youngsters that have never been parented. They've never been taught social graces. They've never been taught courtesy. They've never been taught these things by their parents. So I think that's part of the problem. Solving it is a challenge. I was listening to someone, it was in, I think, New Jersey, a principal there. He'd established a laundromat for the kids that were missing school because they didn't have a way to clean their clothes and they would not come to school with dirty clothes. This is not the responsibility of a school, in my opinion. It's a responsibility of the parent. But the school has taken on that responsibility of parenting children.
Which is not their responsibility, but somebody has to try.
Right.
Yeah.
We can't throw these youngsters away. But my point is that we've lost our foundation as a society, and that's just my unprofessional opinion.
As I was growing up, my mom was single, and she had 2 kids, my brother and I, and during the summertime, we were sent off to a camp, you know, and we learned survival out there. We had to make our beds in the morning, we were clean and everything, but we learned to swim, archery. I mean, it was like 2 weeks, you know, and we learned. I think this area is really a good area for a camp for kids to go.
There was, years ago, there was a project that had been suggested for our area, that it would be like the program, what is it, Nebraska, where they had what is the father that started a school for youngsters? It was a Catholic endeavor. Do any of you remember? And so he started this school for youngsters that were really orphaned. And they were going to come in and provide, it was going to start out as a parent could call and say, well, my youngster's on drugs or I'm having trouble, and they would provide counseling. And ultimately, their goal was to have a setup like a camp where these youngsters that were in trouble, they could go to this camp and spend as much time. Well, the funding for that never took place because it was private.
We have all kinds of resources. I mean, there is so much out there that nobody knows where, you know.
Well, we need
The
to
welfare
have,
referring them to this, the homeless shelter is referring it over here. And yeah,
we need to
have all the
we need to
resources, we're just
capitalize on that.
implementing it.
There used to be a camp, gosh, it's been over 20 years ago, I'm guessing, because it was before I was at the family center. Earl Chavis was involved with it somehow, and I remember him telling me about it. But I don't remember if it was a week long or just a weekend, but they had a camp for kids who needed some extra TLC, and it, I don't know what ages they focused on, but it would be at Blue Water Lake.
I know, Grass Church of Christ on First Street used to have a camp. I don't know if they still do. My kids didn't attend to that, but they did attend the camp just to go and learn things, and they were gone for a week.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and that Blue Water.
yeah,
Come back with a sleeping bags full of dirt. But
yeah.
And there
Yeah.
was the ropes course that was started by the Kellos and
Yeah,
one of the church groups here.
yeah.
And so that's no longer available. But we've got to continue to pursue this because our youngsters are the lifeblood of our community and our future.
And that would probably help with employment. They know that they have to go out there and work and train and want to work. But nowadays, they just, parents just
Yeah.
do what they want instead
Well,
of making them work for them.
Along that line, a good mentoring program where we hook kids up with a role model that can encourage them to do good in school, to be a hard worker, you know, those kind of
They're
things.
like big brother, big sister.
Yeah, yeah.
Do we still have Jolt?
We don't. Yeah,
That was another program I thought was really good for law enforcement.
yeah. John Castaneda was the one that kind of facilitated that, and he got other law enforcement, but then when he left the city, yeah, we haven't, but that was another good program that focused on kids and teaching them work ethic and just a lot of life skill in a condensed week, and a lot of good came from that program. Made difference for a lot of kids, I think. So yeah, those are the kind of things I guess we can work as a community to help our youth be better prepared and willing to work.
How did you start a mentoring? You just mentioned the mentoring program.
Yeah.
How did you start that?
Well, we'd have to get an organization to facilitate it. You were a mentor when we had it at Future Foundations. That's kind of, I think we had that for 3 years or so, and then it kind of fell by the wayside as directors changed. But some of you came, that lady from Gallup, from the Big Brother, Big Sister program in Gallup came, and she keeps talking about expanding to grants. And I think after the meeting, Danny Alamanza happened to be here with, who's a local pastor, and he offered her a free office space. So I'm not sure if anything's happening from that, because basically she needs to sign up mentors and then get referrals for the youth, typically from the schools.
I don't think our community has responded very well.
But you know, I haven't seen any advertisement out there saying we're looking for mentors. And personally, for me, I've kind of learned over the years, if you want volunteers, you have to personally ask them. You know, approach people and say, hey, would you consider being a mentor? And just putting an ad out there, we didn't always have good response. We did sometimes, but typically, if you approach somebody, then they go, oh, I never thought about that. Sure, you know, I think I might be interested. So,
It's a volunteer thing, we kind of drag them on the street.
right. You guys know that through all the organizations you're on. I'm going to turn it over to Brandon here in a minute. We're going to talk to you a little bit about community block development grants, but I wanted you to, everybody, help us get more people registered for Code Red. There's a link on the city's website, on our homepage at the bottom, and also on the county's website at the bottom. You click on the link for Code Red, and then it walks you through registering. And you list, it's best to list a cell phone number, I believe, and then you will get all emergency announcements, water shutoffs, things like that. And so we're trying to encourage people to register for that program. You can list an email, you can list your home phone, a cell phone, all the various ways you want to be contacted, or just one of the ways, and then you'll get notices through all of them or just one or two, whatever you select. Brandon, do you want to help me? We're at the time of year where we're wanting to ask for feedback on any projects you think. It's the time of year that we can ask community block development grants. And you can ask for anywhere up to typically 750,000, and it's money from the state. It's kind of a complicated process to follow through with their procedures, but things in our community that have been built with block development grants are Radio Street. Radio Street was having a lot of leaks, so that whole infrastructure there, water sewer lines, their sidewalks, curb and gutter were all redone with block development grant. Future Foundations was built with community block development grants. There were 5 different years the county received funding for that. The county and city partnered. The county was the lead. Our Department of Health office over our new one on next to the county complex on Roosevelt, that was built with community block development grants. So Brandon, is there more you can share with them?
Yeah, so I'm just going to quickly go over a presentation with you all. I don't have handouts, unfortunately, but we will be doing another hearing, I think, before the next council meeting, so sometime next week.
Next Monday, I think at 5 o'clock at City Hall.
All right. So again, my name is Brandon Howe. I work with the Northwest New Mexico Council of Governments as a planner. I'm working closely with Laura and Donald to help guide them through this application process. It's a pretty intensive application process. And again, it is for Community Development Block Grant, which is administered through the state at the local government division. This is an annual program that the state puts out, and local entities, counties, cities, tribal entities, and the larger metropolitan areas get their own set-aside funds, so they're not part of this pot that we're applying for. We compete statewide with other smaller communities. Typically, the money is utilized for infrastructure projects, as Laura mentioned, road projects, bridge projects, water, wastewater, public facilities, senior centers. There's a whole slew of projects that are eligible for this funding source, and one of the requirements for this grant application is for the local entity to provide opportunities for public input. So that's kind of why we're here today, to kind of present this program to you all. I'm going to quickly go over again this presentation. I again apologize that I don't have handouts. Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. So I'm going to go over just the program objectives. So the main objective is to benefit principally low and moderate income families, aid in the prevention of slum or blight, meet urgent community development needs, where an existing condition poses a threat to the health and welfare of the community. So annually, the program typically distributes about $11 million across the state. As Laura mentioned, entities are allowed to apply up to $750,000 And that is if they are working with an engineering firm and they provide the stamp on the cost estimate. So if they are not able to put their stamp on the cost estimate, the entity can only apply for $500,000. So there's a big difference there in getting that certified cost estimate put together. As I mentioned, Albuquerque, Las Cruces, Santa Fe, Farmington, and Rio Rancho, they all get their own pots of money and they distribute locally themselves. So they're not a part of this process. Water and mutual domestic associations may apply for planning grants, but only through the county. And again, sanitation districts, public nonprofit groups, etc., they can work with the county if they have a project that is theirs. Tribal entities, again, they receive funding directly from HUD, so they're also not a part of this program as well. Some of the eligible activities, the categories, community infrastructure, again, water, sewer systems, street improvements, curb, gutter, sidewalks, housing, real property acquisition, rehabilitation, clearances, provision of public facilities, public service capital outlay, so community centers, senior centers, recreational centers, health centers, kind of those kind of facilities there. Economic development, to assist communities in creating or retaining jobs for low and moderate income persons. This is kind of one of the separate set aside of this program. It's kind of difficult to get this kind of that set aside because you have to create a certain number of jobs based on the amount of money you're able to obtain or requesting. So that's kind of been a tricky one for a lot of communities throughout the state to get, but there have been cases where that has been allocated. And again, emergency addressing life-threatening situations resulting from disasters or threats to health and safety. In order to qualify for that project category, there must be an appropriate state agency that has kind of signed off on this threat or situation. Again, planning grants, that's another separate set aside to this program. The city has utilized the planning grants in the past. You can apply up to $50,000 to update the comprehensive plan, develop a strategic plan for the city, conduct engineering reports for specific projects, so on and so forth. And then there is a Colonius set aside as well, but the City of Grants does not apply for that. Ineligible activities, any work done to city halls or courthouses, with the exception of ADA compliance. So if ADA compliance is needed at City Hall or a courthouse or a city-owned facility, that's eligible, but improving the actual structure of it is not eligible. Housing allowance payments, mortgage subsidies, expenditures for political purposes are all not eligible activities. As part of the program, as I mentioned, the state and the federal HUD agency wants the local governments to conduct public hearings. We're only required to conduct one public meeting. We did one, I think, 2 weeks ago at the senior center during their lunch period. So we went there, we had a public hearing there, we got some projects there. We're doing one now, and then we're gonna do one again next week. So we're having 3 opportunities for public input, and I think I sent Donald a comment form as well. So if you're not able to attend one of those, or if you kind of just want to put it on paper and send it back to Donald's office, that's available as well. So what we do is once we have these meetings, we get projects. We don't necessarily determine eligibility at the public hearings. We just kind of catching all the project ideas. We're taking notes, we draft minutes, and then myself, Donald, and Laura will go and take a look at all the projects that have been stated, determine eligibility, and then kind of select maybe the top 3 or top 5, or maybe just the one that we would recommend for approval by the city council. So we take this to the city council, and we had initially identified the 20th as the date that the council would select the project. However, if that is
Yeah.
gonna be canceled.
I think the meeting's the 20th is a holiday, so I think it's gonna be moved to the 21st or the 22nd. We
Okay.
haven't decided, we're trying to see when the council are available.
Okay. So yeah, sometime during that week, and if not, maybe the first meeting in February is where we'll approve the project. We got a quick turnaround to put together a methodology as part of the application packet to determine that we're benefiting a certain percentage of LMI individuals. So if it's a certain local road project, a street project, what we might have to do is go do a door-to-door survey to ask individuals about their household income so that we can identify the number of LMI persons on that street and see if the project qualifies. Projects such as a community center or that benefit, the community wide, we can use American Community Survey data from the Census Bureau, and the city does qualify that route. So that's a much easier route to go, but the project has to benefit the entire community. There's also a limited clientele. We've utilized that category for senior centers. HUD automatically classifies them as low to moderate income individuals, so that's another easier route. Others are victims of domestic violence, homeless populations, certain groups that are kind of predetermined to be LMI individuals. So those are kind of the three categories the three methodologies that we will use, again, based on what project we decide to move forward with. Again, the application and the project must address at least one of the national objectives. The first one is, must benefit low and moderate income persons, must prevent slum and blight, or must meet an urgent or life-threatening community development need. The state, unfortunately, doesn't recognize slum and blight. We do have an MRA designation report for downtown grants. We've tried to utilize that as our mechanism to get projects awarded in downtown areas. We've tried to do it for Gallup, Farmington. It's just not working through the state process. So right now all we're doing is low and moderate income categorization for these projects. And so moving on, the application requirements, as I mentioned, $750,000 is the maximum request amount with the certified cost estimate, $500,000 without, and then $50,000 for planning grants. And the city can have a planning grant and an infrastructure grant at the same time.
Could you define a planning grant?
Yes, a planning grant is it's $50,000 to fund a planning activity. So that could, as I mentioned, it could be utilized for updating the comprehensive plan, kind of the citywide vision. It could be utilized to develop engineering documents for specific projects. It could be utilized for strategic plans for city functions. Kind of that realm of just general planning activities. A lot of entities utilize it for the comprehensive plan because the state kind of requires or recommends that local entities have an updated comprehensive plan, and under 5 years or anything over 5 years is considered out of date in terms of a comprehensive plan. And then a lot of other funding sources require that a community have a comprehensive plan and projects be listed in those comprehensive plans.
Would a
That's
planning
fine.
grant include payment for consultants to come in?
Yes,
Something is feasible.
that's exactly what it's for. Yeah. So a lot of times the cities and the counties and villages, they'll bring in Wilson and Company or so on and so forth to conduct a feasibility study or a engineering report or a comprehensive plan for that community there. So as Laura mentioned, I think Radio Street was the last project that the city has applied for, and that was done in 2014. I think the city was awarded about $360,000 for that full reconstruction of that roadway there. They completely close out that project, one of the requirements for the program is that any entity that has an existing project must be completely finished, closed out, before they can reapply for another grant. So the city is good to go on that end. There are a couple of other requirements, such as financial documentation, audit reports and stuff like that, quarterly reports to the state that the city does internally that have to be in place before they apply. But our application is not due until June, so we have a lot of time to get some of those things done if they haven't already been done. There is a required cash match for this program. Rural applicants with 3,000 population or less are required to submit a 5% cash match. The city will be required to submit a 10% cash match because they don't fall under that 3,000 threshold. So applications are scored by rating certain criteria such as description and need, benefit to low and moderate income persons, leveraging, citizen participation, planning, feasibility and readiness, user fees and revenues, and cost benefit. Once we submit the application, their staff reviews our application. They assign us a certain number of points they feel is necessary for the project. And then the city is then required to go to the state to present the project to the Community Development Council, where they have additional certain number of points where they can allocate directly to those projects. And so typically that occurs in about September, October time frame. So we will go out there, present the project if we do submit an application, and we'll go back again about 2 or 3 weeks later for the allocation meeting, where we'll find out whether or not the city has been awarded. So with that, I'll kind of just open it up. I know you don't have anything to look at. I apologize again for that, but we're really looking for kind of community infrastructure projects, and we'll just open up the floor.
You mentioned one of the objectives were slum areas, but you've identified the downtown area along Santa Fe Avenue. We have a really blighted slum area out on Lobo Canyon Road. These two apartment complexes are, I think that we could all agree that it's a haven for drug addicts and that sort of thing. The police go out there on a daily basis, but that's not something that we can address, is it?
It depends. I mean, it depends on what the project is. If it's a road project in that area, it's eligible to go through the LMI category as opposed to the slum and blight, because as I mentioned before, for some reason the state of New Mexico, they don't recognize the slum and blight category. A lot of the smaller communities, especially along 66, have MRA plans for their downtown districts where they designate these areas as slum and blight, and we've tried to utilize those reports, which were paid for by the local governments, to categorize or classify those projects as slum and blight, and then we just can't get it to work. So if it's a road project, or if it's renovating the apartment complex, possibly. It depends on ownership of the properties. Typically what we've seen is local governments kind of stick to just the public realm of these projects. Applications, roads, sidewalks. We've done a project in Gallup where we worked in a low and moderate income housing development area, and the city focused on the streets. So they reconstructed the streets, redid the subsurface utilities. They added ADA compliant sidewalks to the sidewalks of the homes.
This is not with the city, but it's in the county. What about Blue Water Village?
Blue Water Village, they are eligible if they work with the county. I did approach the county a few weeks ago, and they're not wanting to apply this year. They're wanting to apply next year. I think their focus is on making sure their internal operations are satisfied there before they go and apply for this funding source. But Blue Water Village is eligible to apply through the county, yeah. Are there any other project ideas, road projects around town? And we've heard, I think, Washington Street, we've heard that project.
Which block?
I'm not
I
sure.
think they're talking probably by the school,
The school, yeah.
because they're doing a lot of, we've applied for money for flooding in that area, so they're talking about then, yeah, some parts of Washington, would be west of the school has no sidewalk, and so then kids are walking in the street. I'm guessing that's what they're talking
On the
about.
street going, it goes Truman turns by the Graham's house to Mesa Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
Because that area right there is always flooded when it rains, and there's not really any walking way there. And you guys put the speed bumps, which is good, the speed bumps. I guess.
Uh-huh.
Because people did drive fast through there, and believe me, I almost got me the head off collision with that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you guys put that there. But that area right there, that turn, I mean, they still can't go fast there after they go over it. But right there, it's a lot of flooding and potholes, and I try to avoid that area,
Yeah.
but sometimes I have to go through there.
The other
But that
day,
area,
Mm-hmm.
the other evening, I was driving down Roosevelt from the east. There are no lights, and you can't see the stripings at night. I mean, it's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what lane you're driving in, but there are no lights out on East Roosevelt.
Okay.
Yeah, some of the other projects that were mentioned was, I think, one of the well projects. One of the well projects, a gentleman mentioned the drainage, Rio San Jose. Let's see, Gabaldon Street, I don't know where that's at. One of the residents identified that as a street that's in rough condition. Santa Fe Avenue, kind of, as Laura was mentioning, as part of an economic project. I mean, it's an infrastructure project, but it has great economic benefit if it's reconstructed to, you know, be a little bit more aesthetic, and a little bit more pedestrian friendly. There is the MRA plan that has identified the stretch between, I think, Silver and First or something, Fifth maybe.
Mm-hmm.
That is prime opportunity for certain funding sources and to be redeveloped and reconstructed with hopes that it will attract new businesses to that corridor there. So projects like that have been mentioned. Yeah.
I know the 800 block of High Street, we've had lots of water leaks and sewer backups, and there's also I believe it's a low-income apartment complex that's there.
Okay.
If it's not low income, then it's certainly
Yeah.
kind of a blighted area.
Mm-hmm.
So you're thinking the road and all the sidewalk
The
stuff?
road, water,
Okay.
sewer.
Is that where the old funeral home used
Yeah,
to be?
correct.
Because there are two properties there that are really abandoned, aren't there?
Exactly. And actually, that building, I don't know what shape it is, but
doesn't that really belong to Tommy Cole? Because I think he bought it to make sure no one opens another funeral home.
I don't know. Huh.
Many years ago, he did that.
Huh. We'll have to look on the map and
it
see.
was Hawker before.
There was Bucket before, and then Tommy Cole.
Hmm.
Are there any public facilities that are in need of significant repairs or reconstruction?
I know of one that needs a demo.
Nah.
One thing that kind of crossed my mind, I don't know if it would ever work because it's a entity.
Mhm.
But there's a abandoned hotel, I believe it's Franciscan on Santa Fe. Yeah, Franciscan Lodge. I was thinking if the housing could purchase that, renovate it, and turn it into apartments or, something of that, it would kill two birds with one stone. One is provide low-income housing, and two, it would take care of a blighted building.
Okay.
Actually, we should do that with all hotels.
I'd love
know,
that.
huh?
800,000 doesn't get you too far. Might get you a roof. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Open carpet, that might be it.
Mhm.
There are some things that I'd like to bring up that are not part of the meeting today, but one is the community pantry needs a director or a couple of board members from grants. The community pantry is under the umbrella of the grants pantry, and my tenure ended the end of this last year.
You mean Gallup or grants?
Gallup oversees the grants pantry. They provide the funding primarily, and they do a lot of funding for our grants pantry. They raise a lot of money to keep the pantry going. But we need, they'd like to see 2 people on that board from grants, and finding people that really are interested in making our pantry even better than it is. There have been a lot of great things that have happened in the last couple of years. They have a great director, and we just need to find people that care enough about the pantry, because you go there and you will see a lot of elderly, a lot of infirm people going there on a regular daily basis. So they have volunteers. Some of them, there's one gentleman that's been there from the day that Reverend Reuben, what was his last name? Anyway, Thomas,
Reuben
right.
Thomas.
When he was there, he's been there all that time, and he's in his late 80s, volunteering every single week. And he's just about worn out. So we need not only great volunteers, but we need board members too. And then the Animal Care Center, there's an ordinance that I hope the city will adopt. And it's going to make a big change, because we do have a serious problem in our community with the animals that are picked up. The majority are picked up right here in grants. We have the county, the pueblos, the village, but the majority of those animals that are right here in our community that are picked up. And we're having to transport them. That's expensive, to transport them to Arizona and Colorado and various other places that will take these animals. Roberta's place, right now they've got 25 people they're living there. I think they really only have like 4 bedrooms, but you can imagine someone coming in with several children. One of the things that I've been involved with is cleaning out my closet so that these women can go to hearings when they have to apply for custody of their children or go before a court, job interviews. So if you've got nice clothes that these women could wear to go to work, they're wanting to establish themselves. And when they go get an apartment, they don't have sheets, they don't have pots and pans, they don't have any of these things to set up housekeeping, because many of them have even come with just in their pajamas. So they have a need there. And then our ROTC program leads the country as being the best ROTC program in the nation. They've competed with college-level ROTC programs and come out the winners. But we need officers to head those programs. They will no longer accept an enlisted person to head those programs. So if you know of any officer that would be willing to come to grants to head, and they need 2, one in grants and one at Laguna Acoma. So those 2 programs are really critical if we're going to keep our ROTC programs here in grants. Otherwise, come this next school year, we won't have an ROTC program. So they won't take enlisted people, it has to be an officer.
Hmm.
And that's a new regulation, I guess.
So Barbara, if we want to get clothes, do we just take to the thrift shop and look at that, or do we go to the actual shelter?
Go to the shelter because they get them free, period.
To the
But
shelter?
Furniture,
go to their,
anything.
go to their office, not to the, to where they have the thrift store.
Yeah.
Maybe
Go to
not.
the office, go to the office and donate it there.
Oh, because I've been taking things to the thrift shop.
Right, because that's for resale.
Yeah.
So we want these women to get some of these things. Okay.
Any other comments, suggestions?
Well, I just wondered, when we had the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, did you have enough volunteers?
I'm thinking we got about 10 volunteers when we had it going. So some were our staff at the center, and then we had about 5 or 6 outside individuals. And we did an on-site volunteer program where people came to the center and volunteered there. We felt like it was a little easier to manage and less risk, and that seemed to work well. I've always envisioned for the high school level, we've talked for many years about having a program where we send high school kids to a job site. So maybe they would come once a week and be my sidekick at the city, after school, and watch me do my work, and I would be a role model. I'd have a chance to tell them, how's school going, encourage them to do well, put the bug in their ear about work ethic, stuff like that. So that's another one that I think would be really good, is have them come to work sites, because that's fairly easy. Nobody needs to leave their work or volunteer their personal time. And then they're learning skills. You can have them, show them how to file, show them things on the computer, and you're still doing your job. We could send them to the bank, all kinds of places to be with an adult on site.
In California, my cousin graduated within the last 10 years, and that's exactly one of the requirements for the seniors. It was called Senior Project. And so there were specific volunteer groups and workplace that deemed it fine for them to show up, and they had to give 10 hours a week for their senior year. And then the project concluded with a write-up from their mentor, and then their own little dossier on what they learned and how it's applicable to life. But it was actually really good for him. It forced him to volunteer, and he wasn't very personable before, but it forced interaction, and so that it was good for him. So I don't know if that's something we could talk to our local admin, or if it's got to come from the state level. But that would help with some of these other volunteer programs that, if it's a requirement.
Make it a credit requirement.
Right.
That you do some kind of service, basically, is
Some
service
type-
credit.
Sort of service or mentorship.
Yeah.
If you
So-
know you want to be an engineer, you could put.
Yeah. There was a JJAC program here, Juvenile Justice Advisory Council, and I was on that when I was at the Family Center. It was run through the county, but we talked about high school mentoring program and something to that effect, but I don't think it ever got off the ground. You'd have to do background checks, of course, and run people, so somebody would have to foot the bill for that. But other than the background checks, so maybe a coordinator who coordinates people where they go, but I don't know if that's something the schools have the resources, but I think it's definitely needed. It's kind of amazing how just a little time, when I was the principal at Mesa View, we did a mentoring program, and it was just with our own staff, and I assigned them kids that were always getting sent to the office in trouble. And, okay, you have little Johnny, you have Mary, spend some time with them, go visit them for a minute in their classroom, eat lunch with them, that kind of stuff. Go to the playground, visit with them, go, do something on the playground with them. Just that little bit of time, those kids were getting less referrals to the office. So it's amazing, I think, just a little bit of extra TLC that some of these kids need, or to think somebody cares about them. It makes a big difference. And, you know, I don't think we realize how much we impact youth, you know, when they see what we do or see us as role models. That, you know, you could change the life of some youth by something you do, and they didn't have that in their own home, but they see it through a mentor. And
There was, I don't know if any of you read the article that Laura had submitted about, it's been what, a month or so ago?
mhm,
You know, we're here to talk about what government is going to do for our community. But I believe that it's individuals that are going to make the difference in the community. Those people that care about the community, can see a need and move forward with that. It's left up to us to make our community better. I think Grants Main Street has contributed significantly to the quality of life for our community. The things that they've done over the years have impacted us for many, many years. And those kinds of things, we can still be making a difference.
The attitude I hear out there sometimes, you know, when it comes to caring for the community and helping the city of Graham, the county, you know, a lot of people say, well, the county and the city will be willing to tell anyone anyway, they don't care about us. Which I'm like, it's like bumping heads and that's what
It's
you have
changing the
that.
attitude, you know?
Yeah,
The
that's what I
attitude
try to tell them, like, well, no, like, well, you gotta get involved, you know, but
mhm,
Well, it's like
sometimes
with
you can't
the,
change your mind.
with the Grants Rodeo Association, we have our community service people come in and do help with this stuff. And it has turned their life around, and they're more interested in how the rodeo works and everything, so we get volunteers for that.
mhm.
So, it's just, the attitude is
Yeah.
physical contact with these people, with the community, and saying, following up with what you're saying to them. And a lot of people don't follow up what they're gonna do, and that's where it's at. That's what I've noticed since I started with Main Street, is following up with the people.
I think that we all care about our community and where it's headed. And I think years ago, I read a definition of politics, and I think the old definition was the people. It's not the government, it's the people. So we are those people that are going to make a difference.
True. Anything else? Thank you for coming. This was great this morning. A lot of good ideas.